Let's talk about repurposing your podcast without driving yourself crazy. You have just created a beautiful, wonderful, informative, long-form content for your ideal listener to absorb. Congratulations! But now you want it to go out far and wide and you want it to find more ears. But how do you do that without getting stuck on the hamster wheel, feeding the content monster in places where we just don't get the results? We don't get that drive back to our shows. So where and how can we repurpose in a way that feels so good that you're like, why wasn't I doing this yesterday? All right, let's go. Welcome to the podcast about podcasting, where you guessed it, we're talking all things podcasting, but not just in a sense of strategy of how to launch, grow, and monetize your show. Of course, you're going to get that, but we're going deep into how podcasting can actually help you build your community, build your confidence, and if you're willing to lean deep into this platform, it can be the ticket to the life of your dreams, because it'll inspire you to go deeper, to get to know yourself. And as we know, success starts from within. If you are ready to stop being a ripple in this world and bust out your tsunami of change you know you were made for, it's podcasting for your soul. I'm your host, Jenn Dragonette, so let's dig in. Okay, well first I'm going to start with you need to do some planning. This is one of the things that I have fallen short with time and time again. It is the last hour. I need an episode out. It needs to go out in a few hours. All right, I'm just going to throw something together. And you start really just pushing it out. Well, first, that just screws with your energy. And second, it doesn't set you up for success in repurposing. There are so many benefits of repurposing that I'm going to hang my head in shame because I haven't done this for a long time. I have a laundry list of things that need to get done. Hello, if you are a VA out there that wants to help me out, reach out, because what I need to do is repurpose all this amazing content that I had in an easy way. I'm already using some AI softwares to make some of the copy editing easier, but I'm still not taking all that information and putting it on all the places. Why? Because I have convinced myself that it is too overwhelming. Because for the last 3 years, I have used the metaverse to try to grow my show. I haven't taken the time to actually sit down and say, okay, how are people consuming on each platform? And what are we doing to make things that serve the audience we want to serve with our podcast? So here is how going forward, I will be repurposing and lining up my show. I'm going to give you the step-by-step of how I'm going to do this. So if you are someone who wants a step-by-step action plan of somebody who is not only creating 3 episodes a week for my own podcast, I am also managing 17 other podcasts a week. I'm sending out 17. So there are 20 episodes that go out a week that I produce. So this is my step-by-step approach. 1, I want you to have a general outline. If you're like me, you still got to shoot from the hip. You are not a structured person I'm going to read a script. If you are, great. Hello, you have just set yourself up. But I'm not one that can sit down, write an outline, write a script, and then tell you. That would drive me crazy. And the episodes would sound like robotic. This is Jennifer. We are talking about, no, you just don't want that from me, but that outline. So I have that outline and then I have a beautiful conversation with you, the listener. Now that I have those 2 pieces of content, I'm able to look and say, okay, here's my outline, here's my content. I do use a software called Capsho, but you can do this yourself if you don't want to use a paid for system. Shout out to Capsho. Their information is in the show notes. I am not a partner with them yet, but we are working to change that. But what I do is I take that audio and I pull it into a software called Capsho. And what Capsho does is it helps me come up with an outline for my show description, so that thing that you see in the podcast player, some social media posts, which I don't really use, LinkedIn, the blog post, which is really critical, a newsletter, and it comes up with a bunch of other things. But let's say you don't have that software. So what I would do was I have the outline that I have now just recorded. I would take that outline and I would expand it out into something that is able to be understood by reading in a short version. That short version with the links to whatever I've mentioned, and of course my freebies and how to get a hold of me, would be in that description, that part that's inside your podcast player. I would get that scheduled first and foremost. All right, you've done the audio, you've cleaned it up, you've run it through whatever softwares, whatever editing you've done. You've just taken your outline and you've turned it into a short form show notes. So that description inside your podcast player. Get that scheduled into your account. Number two, the next step, I would take those show notes, add a paragraph or two to it that expands it out, lets it go a little bit deeper. It may seem counterintuitive because you're like, Jen, I'm giving everybody step 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, which is in my episode. Why are you making me write this out? Here's the great thing. Not everyone can sit there and listen to a podcast. So now I want you to take that expanded show notes, that expanded show description, and I want you to put it on your website as a blog. Don't have a blog yet? There's the first thing we need to work on, because we need you being able to be found on Google easier. So now I've taken that expanded show notes and I've put it onto my website. It made it a blog. So again, we're just repurposing. Then I take a little chunk of that and I put it on social media. Yes, I still on occasion spread it out to the metaverse. It doesn't work, but I haven't fully given that up. Then I create a post for LinkedIn. So I create a graphic for LinkedIn and I take a little chunk of that blog post and I make it enticing and I put it on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is optimized for podcasters. This is something that I am just getting into. All right. So now we're still using that same piece of content that I started with, that same outline. Once I have that, I expand out my blog post a little bit more. Maybe I add 1 or 2 paragraphs, go into a little bit more depth, and I create what's called a LinkedIn article. And then I also embed in the link to the episode. So if somebody doesn't want to read the article, they can go see my episode. So I've put all that out there. Now, weekly, I combine all the episodes I have and I put a special tip. So a tip that isn't in the episodes that you don't get unless you're on my email list. I put that tip into the email. And then, of course, I mention at the bottom of the email, here's the episodes for the week if you've missed any of them, or if there's a special tip or whatever. I'm like, here's some episodes that you can check out. Great, right? Now, if you're somebody who wants to use like Reels or TikTok, I highly recommend TikTok over Reels, because TikTok is, again, creating a place for podcasters. Don't put an audiogram there. I want you to open your phone up, look at the camera when it comes out, and talk about what that episode is, that biggest takeaway. If you're doing catchy hooks, this is gold. If you are not doing catchy hooks, go back to the episode about hooks and intros, which I will link in the show notes, because you have to know how to do this. And basically, I want you to give your best hook on your TikTok and refer them back to your show. All right, look at all this content we've created. And realistically, this doesn't take that long, because you're expanding on something that you've already created. You already have your transcript. You already have your outline that you've used to have the conversation. And you really just have a step-by-step. Now, wherever else you are, you can keep sharing this. And the fun thing about this is, okay, you've created a legacy content with your podcast. You've created a legacy content with your blog. You own both of those platforms. If you take it one step further and you record via video, you can put that video on YouTube. Yes, down the line, we're going to talk about editing video and really optimizing, but you already have an optimized show title. So you have an optimized YouTube video also. You already have optimized for your blog a blog post with links. So if you do record video, take that video, upload it to YouTube, add the show notes or your blog with the links, and schedule it. If you have time, create a pretty graphic to go on there. I recommend making a template that you can use over and over again. All right, so now you're on all these platforms. Okay, how long did that take? Maybe 2 hours, 2.5 hours, depending on how long your episodes are. But remember, listenership is around 20 minutes, which is why I like to give you these short, quick hits. So if you are designing a 20-minute episode, let's say you take 5 minutes to plan, 20 minutes to record, you do some very minimal editing, 15 minutes, you write your show description based off of that outline that you already have. You upload all of that, you put it into a blog post, you expand it out, then you create some social copy. So whether that's LinkedIn, Metaverse, whatever. Again, Metaverse is not the best for conversion, but if you're there and you have a warm audience, get them off the platform. If not, focus on LinkedIn and Tickety Talk. And then you create a reel. So you open up you create a TikTok where you open it up, talk to the camera, tell the camera about what it is. You can even do B-roll with talking over it, but get that catchy hook down. You've shared it there. You've shared it in your communities. Now you can take one extra tip that you didn't put in your blog post that you throw into your email, and then you put some links down in there and you schedule it all out, and boom, it's out. So each episode, even when I take before Cap Show, I was taking about 2 hours per episode for my 15 to 20 minute episodes. So in 2 hours, I have cross-pollinated across all of these, and I've given each one of the platforms something that's specific that drives there. So it sounds like a lot, but here's the thing. If you are just getting started, I want you to pick one thing. Maybe it's podcast and you're like, I'm going to get the blog because that's legacy content. I want to start working on being found by Google. Maybe it's podcast and TikTok. Maybe it's podcast and you have a newsletter list already. Maybe it's those two. Get really good before you start expanding out too much, or hire somebody that does it. But that's how I repurpose my podcast and turn it in where it looks like I'm showing up everywhere. But really, some of those things are only taking me less than 5 minutes because I've already created the graphic for something. I've already created the copy for something, and I'm literally repurposing it how it's going to perform on that platform. On TikTok, yes, it's totally recreating new content because you're looking at the camera, but I already know my catchy hook because I've already recorded a catchy hook on my podcast, and I'm just sharing it face to camera, making it fun and catching people's attention so they'll go listen to my podcast off the Tickety Talk app. So I want to know, how are you repurposing your content? Of course, you can find all my information in the show notes. And I don't know but on the 27th, we are doing a free 5-day profitable podcast bootcamp. This is where you are going to get crystal clear on your goal for your podcast so you can stop being a broke podcaster that's not growing. Day 1, clarity. Day 2, passion, people, purpose, and pleasure. Day 3, we are talking about revenue and revving up that revenue. Day 4, we are going to be talking about podcast story selling, how to sell with your story without being a skeezy salesperson. And day 5 is my favorite. It's hot seat coaching, meaning you and me and the community, whoever shows up behind the scenes, and we talk about your specific business. So if you're interested in that, the information is, of course, in the show notes, and I hope to see you there. So I want you to go. I want you to truly think about how you can repurpose your podcast without getting burnt out, because yes, it's work to be found, but if you can build the legacy content, if you can keep the skin in the game for long enough, man, the rewards are fabulous. My show brings in like $2,800 a month without me thinking about it every single freaking month. Like $2,800. That might not seem like a lot to you, but that is me not having to work for that money. That is just what my show brings in. That doesn't include all the other things that I'm doing. How would it feel if you put a year in and maybe you go all in for 2 years and you're starting to just get $5,000 to $10,000 a month just for creating podcasts? Would it be worth it to you? It's a slow build, but man, once it's on fire, those hot coals keep that revenue revved up. Go out, make today amazing, because you are beautiful, you are wonderful, you are worthy, and you deserve for your story, for your magic, to make the big bucks so you can make the big impact. All right, I'll see you next episode.